Okay, 1. Desire. Desire, Begierde, arises simply because consciousness exists, because consciousness of an object is connected to self-consciousness. Desire arises because I am confronted with an object which is not myself, or in which I do not see myself. An object which is opposed to me is the negation of myself and a not I, hence an independent object. However, this should not be, since self-consciousness is the truth and alone reality. Hence, desire is just the desire or urge to change this situation, to negate, destroy, or consume the independent object or other which negates me. I desire to confront myself, not an other. I further desire the satisfaction of seeing myself, my self-certainty, in objective form, a satisfaction which comes from negating, consuming the object before me. Recall that immediate self-consciousness is just an abstract, empty, or pure I, which needs filling and objectification in order to become a concrete, actual self-consciousness. And I equals I, a genuine unity of opposites. This means that consciousness and its independent object are necessary to self-consciousness, which it will learn in this dialectic of desire. In brief, there appears to be an independent object, living or non-living, in front of me. I then destroy or consume it, for it denies the reality I know I am, and in my act of removing its objective being, I experience the satisfaction of a sense of myself as objective. But the satisfaction is short-lived, for with the destruction and disappearance of the object, the desire recurs, as well as the need for a new independent object, whose destruction will again give only a temporary satisfaction. Two things result. 1, it is impossible to do away with the independent object. An object must always remain if there is to be satisfaction. 2, since the object must remain, that I may see and have myself in objective form and be a real self-consciousness, and it is futile for me to negate the object and negate objects forever, the only solution is to have an object that not only remains, but negates itself. That is, that allows me to see myself in it, so that in confronting it, I am in relation only with myself. This object can only be another consciousness, a living self-consciousness. That is, an object which is also a subject, the same as I am. Reciprocal recognition between two selves is the only solution. 2, master-slave recognition. Quote, self-consciousness exists in and for itself when it so exists for another. It exists only in being acknowledged, end quote. This is how the section Independence and Dependence of Self-Consciousness, Lordship and Bondage begins. Our first question is, what does it mean to be recognized by someone? A question not considered by most commentators. First, a thing or mere object cannot recognize you or acknowledge your existence. Only a subject or consciousness can do so, i.e., a thing, body, or object which also has consciousness, a subject-object. Second, for someone, a subject, person, to acknowledge your existence means they regard you as a subject like themselves and not an object or thing. Thus, an identity is established. Each experiences himself doubled, existing here and also there. Because of this identity between you, you now see yourself in the object, the other person before you. You have actualized your self-consciousness. You are confronted by an object or other in which you see nothing but yourself. Also, you yourself know that you are conscious and free, are a subject and not a mere object, but you don't know if the object confronting you, which looks like you, is a subject and consciousness as well. You also don't know if the object or other, who may be a subject, sees you as a subject and not just a thing. For someone not to acknowledge or recognize you means that they do not regard you as a subject or consciousness like themselves, i.e., as a free being, independent of the natural order of things, but rather as a mere object, thing, or body, no different from a tree, an ashtray, or a dog. I.e., they regard you as nothing. This is the common experience of being ignored or slighted. Now we can understand why a confrontation of two selves in the primeval forest or state of nature results in a fight to the death or life and death struggle. Simply put, I've just finished consuming objects, turning them into myself. I, a subject and free being, now have before me an object, which also appears to be a subject like myself. My desire is to see only myself in this other subject. I desire to be recognized by him, for him to see me as a subject, a free being for myself, and not just an object or body. Of course, he has the same desire. Indeed, each wants to be recognized by the other, but is unwilling to recognize the other in turn. However, how can each know that the other is really a free subject and not just another object to be consumed and destroyed? There is no other way than for both of them to risk their lives and try to kill each other in a fight to the death. Risking their life is the proof that they are indifferent to their lives and natural being, that they are more than just their bodies. They are free, conscious subjects. The final outcome of this fight to the death is the famous master-slave dialectic. One of the combatants prefers life to death and non-being and becomes the slave or servant of the victor, who becomes his master. In brief, here we have a recognition which is not equal or reciprocal, but one-sided and asymmetric. The master is recognized by the slave as a free and independent subject, but the master recognizes the slave as only a dependent, unfree object. However, the master, being recognized by the slave, who is only an object and not a subject, is not truly recognized and does not see himself in his object, the slave. What happens then is the opposite of what is expected. The slave, not the master, becomes independent and free. The master just consumes, uses, and negates the offerings of the slave and remains in desire and ego. The slave transcends desire and egotism by serving and working for another and not himself, and by fashioning things and imprinting his form upon them, a table, a chair, a house. In a word, the slave gets to see himself in the enduring objects he has produced, and thereby gets a sense of his independence and freedom, unavailable to the master. In a word, the slave gets to see himself in the enduring objects he has produced, and thereby gets a sense of his independence and freedom, unavailable to the master, who remains dependent on the slave. We now advance to the last moment of the dialectic,